have a superb set of people here. All day long, you've heard the case being made for diversity and inclusion. You saw Shiva's fabulous presentation on the Brook Bond Red Label brand and what they've done over the years. So I think that case and that argument has been made through the day, and I doubt there are any naysayers in the room that diversity and inclusion are important and good to do, okay? But the question is, when you set out to do this and you move out of the airbrushed, safe, sanitized world that's created by ads, and you try and embrace and reflect the plethora of diversities that make up India, and again, I want to refer to Shiva's presentation, you saw that. It's fraught with risk. It can become mere tokenism. It can be boringly politically correct. So in order for it to become nuanced, meaningful, and consistent, you've got to find how to do it, and know better, the people know better than the guys sitting here, because their work and their life experiences have dealt with diversity and inclusion and what this means at a very, very personal and a deep level. So if you want to do this in a meaningful way, then these are the people you have to hear. And let me tell you that they speak their minds, and that is what you need if you want it to be very, very meaningful, isn't it? So that's my little bit. And I'm going to start with Neeraj, because you've chosen to sit the farthest away.
I thought that'll, yeah, I'll be the outlier, but clearly
So,
not.
Neeraj, you broke into our collective consciousness with your debut film, Masan. Since then, and what you did in Masan opened our eyes, and we saw things we were not very familiar with in mainstream movie making. Since then, you've done Gilli Poochi, you've done a short film called Juice, you do a lot of ad films. Give us a sense of how you see this concept of diversity and inclusion with respect to your work. Why does it seem so integral to everything that you've done so far? And that's the theme for the first half of this conversation, this concept through their work. And then we look at their advertising.
Um, I feel diversity is not just a check mark or something like you want to be inclusive, but also there are benefits of being inclusive because it brings richness to your narratives. It brings, varied kind of artists who come in and collaborate with you. So my penchant has been to be fairly inclusive. I've actually started this thing where I advocate on has to be 50% women in my crew. That has been since the time I've started working. And mostly it's more than that, and I'm happy about that. Uh, I've been also trying to advocate this thing where in Hollywood you see this inclusion rider, which has mandates on contracts to have X number of people from a certain community. And I feel that there are so many people making so many narratives about the normal, the cishet, the narratives that are mainstream. Maybe I'm doing this because to offset the balance, and it comes naturally to me because I think I also come from a marginalized background, and I feel that if we don't tell our stories, who will? That's been my journey so far, and what I do not want to do is token inclusion, which is what for instance, like when I tell my HODs of any crew that I work with, I tell them that you're not going to hire one intern who's female and get the check mark done. You have to hire women in power positions, or also LGBTQI, and now also Muslims and people from various marginalized communities. So it's essential for me because I think that's what exactly is India. If it doesn't represent in our crews, in our workspaces, what is even the point? Like we're just not doing it right, I guess.
So starting point is personal in a way?
Personal, and also I feel intersectionality is something that I've harped a lot about. I feel no subaltern exists in isolation because there's always a thing that goes with it. And we have to take all of those identities together and we can't exclude one another. Like if you talk about feminism, you cannot talk about cis-het, urban, rich women all the time. Feminism can also mean somebody who is working as an Anganwadi worker. Even her point of view is also important. So I feel those kind of things.
And we saw this intersectionality and this approach in Gili Puchi really
Yes.
very powerfully, isn't it? Okay, Trinetra, we've been seeing a lot of you. We saw you in Made in Heaven, if you're not already being followed on Instagram, and we are familiar with your story. But give us a sense of how this mandate of diversity and inclusion that everybody now sees as a mandate, how do you see it from where you come and your life experience? Because for you, it's not a mandate, isn't it? This is who you are, and you want space with everybody else.
This is working. No?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
great. Hi, everyone. So this is a quote I bring up at multiple panels and multiple talks because it's so close to my heart. It's framed and put up in my apartment. It says, "You can't be what you can't see." And it's by Marian Wright Edelman, and it hits so close to home. Because all of you sitting here, or most of you sitting here, have had the privilege and joy of watching yourself in some way on a screen at some point growing up. We from the community don't have that privilege and joy. The only versions of ourselves that we get to see on screen are distorted, contorted, caricaturized, absolute jokes, right? And we're laughed at and not laughed with. And I think, like Neeraj said, it's very personal because it's so important for us to be able to see ourselves on a screen in a way that is aspirational and think, okay, you know what, life could be okay. So I think what we don't realize is there are far-reaching consequences to what is put on a screen. It's not just about the numbers in business. Of course, now we know for a fact that being inclusive, whether it's a brand, whether it's a film, it works. We saw a trans Barbie in Barbie, and we know the numbers associated with Barbie. So much as it is business-wise a fantastic thing for us as queer and trans individuals, it's life-saving, you know, which is why I think a very long time ago I made it very integral to my life, you know, to increase the number of queer and trans faces in the mainstream. And it's wonderful that even in this panel, we have multiple queer and trans people sitting here, and it blows my mind because this would have been unimaginable. So thank you to this platform and to all of you for having us here and being that agent of change. So yeah, thank you.
Mansha, at YouTube, how do you see diversity and inclusion, given that you're a platform which has millions of users and it offers people who don't have a platform in the mainstream a chance to express themselves?
Yeah, it's billions of users.
Yeah.
Not just,
In India?
no, just flexing,
Yeah.
flexing. No, look, it's a great question, and I speak for Google and YouTube both. When you have billions of people using your products, diversity, equity, and inclusion is actually at the heart, right? Because you can't have people using your products when they don't see their lived experience reflected in it. And so we train literally thousands of engineers, some 15,000 engineers we train. Over a quarter of them are in APAC. And it's right at the inception of our product features and product development. So for us, it's actually not so much a DEI mandate. It's actually just very core to product development in the first place, right? So it's less ancillary and more at the heart. And I think Neeraj spoke a little bit about that. How do you make it not a mandate, but actually the heart of product development? And that's the way we see DEI. And I'll give a very brief example before I hand it over. You know, this also means that you make some pretty unpopular and controversial decisions, right? Exactly, I'll bring that up. I was thinking about, you know, how to elucidate this point around product. So I don't know if many of you remember, but a few years ago, the dislike count on YouTube could be seen, right? And what it led to was we realized it wasn't a safe and inclusive space, right? What does creativity need? It needs an environment to be conducive. It needs an environment to be safe, inclusive, right? And what we realized is that the dislike count was validating trolls. It was validating harassment. And we put ourselves in the shoes of creators and creative people. And we lost a bit of sleep because we realized that bar no listening session, the people who are getting the most hate, new and horrible and mutating forms of hate and harassment online are women, are BIPOC, are LGBTQ plus creators. These are the people getting the hate, right? And so our leadership actually did an experiment. We removed the view count completely. The like button was there, so as a viewer, you could still dislike a video, right? If you wanted the YouTube algorithm to tune to your vibe or recommendations or whatever. And as a creator, you could still see, how many dislikes you were getting. But we removed the count from public view, and immediately we saw a huge drop in what we call dislike attacks, in trolling, and all of that. Now, I will say it's a controversial decision. People still have bring back the dislike count movements, right? And it's just an example, Anuradha, of how DEI is not actually ancillary. It's at the heart of the product development, even when it's controversial or unpopular. So, yeah, that's just an opening sort of idea.
Sorry? Can I just say you're a star?
YouTube, that's all. It wasn't my decision.
I just said, what a star she is. Put your hands together for this wonderful, wonderful. I said, you're such a star, and you must flex.
Okay, Rani. How much have things changed?
First of all, sorry. Can I just fangirl and say I am being interviewed by the Anurag. Oh my God, okay, can I touch? I just touched you without consent, but don't sue me, but you're real, na? हमने सिर्फ टीवी पे देखा है ना?
I'm going to join the fan club because I've also been a huge fan of Anuradha. I've been watching
come on.
Storyboard
Come
for
on.
many years.
Prime time television से.
Thank you. Oh my God.
और मैं पारोमिता और अनुराधा के
के
बीच
बीच में।
अरे भगवान हमारे जेंडर के जैसे हम भी बीच में ही हैं दोनों देवियों के है ना
But thank you, and you've completely. I'm going to get very tongue-tied between Neeraj and you. Okay, this is not fair. But thank you. I deeply appreciate it. How much have things changed? Trinetra just said there are two of you on this panel. Look at representation and look at the kind of work that you're getting to see, that you're getting as a performer, what you're getting to do. So give me a sense of how much things have changed because you've seen this change. And it's not been, where you are today is not where you began your journey.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I have a better makeup and hair team as well. We have budgets for that now. First of all, namaskar, namasle. मी मराठीमध्ये पण बोलते. पण the thing is that so much has changed also, not just on the panel but also in the audience. I don't no longer only see cis-het people, even in the audience. As Neeraj said, we need people at executive level and decision-making level jobs and posts. And you see so many, we have Vishal is there from the Lalit crew. We have, look at her, we have so many, we had Gauri. So it's not just, and there were many, many events and panels and conferences that I have been to, not just nationally, even internationally, where even though it was speaking about South Asian brilliance or the brown communities in the West, but I didn't see much representation in the audience. So I was like, what really are you, who is your target audience? And how are you walking the talk when you don't have any representation in your own company? So I see that today. So a big round of applause for all of you. And when I say that things have changed, and they have. So I'm speaking of this from a point of view where we started looking at our content. I was very traditional when it came to art and performance art. So I started with musical theater. I'm just pitching myself, huh? You don't have to do many workshops with me.
You sing very beautifully.
I'm just pitching myself for whatever next you're doing. So we were a triple threat. Wow, I pitched well.
Mic drop happened.
So we were, I considered myself a triple threat. And also then all our, whether it was television or whatever, it was immediately put by the television channels or the production theater companies onto YouTube, because YouTube was one of the only platforms then. Instagram was not booming, and Meta was not, not as much. There was something called as Orkut.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
which
died.
which is the ghost of my past, and I don't want to revisit it. But YouTube was there, and I can guarantee you, it was not as safe as it is today. And I was very much like Silk Smitha. I used to put my content out and not see what the comments were, because otherwise I would have perished long back. So clearly something somewhere must have you must have liked, no? People must have liked na about me. काहीतरी असणार माझ्यामध्ये that I survived 17 years, and not survived, I'll say I thrived.
You've thrived.
And it just, keep getting better, you keep getting better, only because if you give time to the people that hate on you, only because they don't even have a premise to hate on you. They just hate for, for sweet F all. And I think that it's maybe, it's what they are. But I concentrate more on the people that shower the love, and the people that love me, and the people that cherish me and my presence, and not just acknowledge me because I walked into a room, but acknowledge me because I come with what I put on the table, and that's my talent. Don't just smile at me because I entered the room. And that's not inclusion. Inclusion is basically when you look at me not as anything sensational, but absolutely normal. And they, these people, this community. I'm sorry, we don't have membership cards to be part of a community. We're part of a community because we were excluded in the first place.
Well said.
And I say this with the utmost pride, that we are as much Indian, as much human, and as much worthy of being here and on this stage, as well as so many of you. You all are important as much as the person sitting next to you, regardless of gender orientation or whatever other characteristic. So things are changing, and I'm happy. I'm here, and I look fabulous to watch it.
Paramita, Agents of Ishq, we've read your columns, we've seen your documentary films, and now Agents of Ishq is this wonderful, inclusive space that you've created to talk about love, sex, and not dhoka, but pleasure. Dhoka bhi, but how to deal with it sometimes, yeah? So when you've done this, and I've been to a couple of workshops that you've done, and I can just see how young people gravitate, not just young people, all kinds of people. All kinds of people, and how did you create that space, and how do you interpret diversity and inclusion in the context of Agents of Ishq?
I mean, I'm not going to repeat what everybody has said, because it goes without saying that whatever everyone said stands when we're talking about diversity. And I think one of the really, we were talking earlier about how we feel teary very quickly. Yeah. Maybe we are menopausing. Maybe we're just sentimental. But the thing is, it's kind of fantastic to hear the self-love in the panel, right? Yeah. Because it makes you feel not stuck in this binary of victims and heroes, but in a sense of thriving together, right? And when Neeraj spoke about intersectionality, which I think is at the core of it, I think it's related to the idea of interdependence, that in a world, we are interdependent. So I think when it comes to inclusion, because I find it intriguing the way the two things are separate, right? Like diversity and inclusion. And I think a lot of people think about diversity, but not about inclusion. So inclusion is about intent. And I think it's about recognizing that as much as society is intersectional, every human being is intersectional, right? And our bodies, our minds, our emotions, our social experiences, our political identities, these are all intertwined in us. So if we want to create inclusion, it can't be, as Neeraj said, a checkbox of identities alone. It has to be finding inclusive frames which will decenter what is considered normal. I think you can't have inclusion if you're going to occupy the old normal in the center all the time, right? That, okay, we are so nice, we're creating a few spaces for people with disabilities. We're so nice, we have hey, some of my best friends are trans. That is not inclusion. So you have to pass the mic, as they say. You have to, so decentering who or what is considered normal, I think is the most important part of inclusion. And I think when Agents of Ishq began, what we thought a lot is also about intent. You have to have the intent to include. It can't just be a kind of, I'm doing my job, I'm such a nice person. I think inclusion is very hard. It's a very political act. So you have to think politically. And when we started Agents of Ishq, we thought, sex, everybody told us you can't do it. Nahin, ye to nahi chalega. And, you know, actually, I've heard that my full life, so I'm kind of used to it. Like, whenever people ask me, what are you doing? I'm making a film on toilets. Oh, eyes glaze over. What are you doing? I'm making a film on feminism. Oh, how boring. So I'm kind of used to people saying, you can't do what you're setting out to do, but then you do it, and people love it, right? So I think we thought sex is the most, like a space which holds the most diversity. Because it's about emotions, it's about lust, it's about desire, it's about many things that are not allowed. And so it's eventually about experience. How do you create a frame where somebody who's never had sex and somebody who's like, oh, I am non-binary, polyamorous, etc., can coexist? And that is through actually just a very simple thing. It's the frame of experience, life experiences, emotions, enjoyment together, like just concepts like apnapan. These are things that bring all people together on an equal plane. And they make us embrace each other and also learn from each other. So there's no hierarchy of whose wisdom, whose emotions, and whose stories are more or less important or exceptional. It's just everybody's in one place, right?
So this sounds very ideal, okay?
It is. Hey, you can do it. It's also cool. Imagine.
It is cool. It sounds very ideal. Will you be able to illustrate, you know, maybe with one incident or an, you know, or some piece that you put up or a decision that you had to make?
Well, I can tell you two stories.
Incident. Please do.
I'm sure you want me to say something that'll get me into hot water. Nobody tweet all this, okay? So, but I think, like, one thing I can say is that when we started Agents of Ishq, we thought we would make some cool content about sex and put it out there. And then people would pay us a lot of money to make more cool content, but that is not how it works with corporates. However, we did have the unique experience. I can tell you some stories about corporates, but that's for another day maybe. So we had the unique experience of people writing to us saying, I also want to be an agent of Ishq. So I think the most interesting thing about that was we had not defined what it means to be an agent of Ishq. And so people began to bring their own meanings of that term. And they actually transformed the project and the platform with their meanings. So a kind of genuine co-creation with the audience began to happen. And I think that was very powerful, that you create a phrase that touches people, intrigues them, it's familiar, but it's a little piquant. So then everybody wants to make their meaning. For somebody, it meant writing a sex poem. For somebody, it meant telling their intimate life stories. So now, Agents of Ishq become this huge repository of personal essays, right? Yeah. But it can be sticky. Like sometimes you get an essay which is, you know, it's on the edge. Like we have an essay, say, for example, I was the abusive one in my relationship. Should you be putting it out there? Should you not? Or you may get, you know, we recently ran a story which involved kind of edgy interaction around consent. So our position is that there should be space for everybody's experiences. We edit the stories. We take a very long time, sometimes months, to edit a story, and to bring it to a place where it's not prescriptive. It's an experience. It's not telling other people this is how you should be. It's not, of course, violent, homophobic, misogynistic, etc. But it should create a space for honest grayness with kindness, compassion, empathy, etc. Now, when we put out the story, we got solidly trolled. And we are mostly trolled by liberal people, no, not by the right wing, surprisingly. Right? And there was a lot of kind of binary of, oh, you can't, this is, you know, consent means this and consent means that. And I think you can read inside a lot of unease with everything that's not neat, with everything that's not in a category. So, you know, it was a violent experience. We found it difficult. And many times we would say, should we take it down? Should we take it down? What should we do? But finally, we felt we can't like throw the person who's written the story under the bus by taking it down. And every time I would say in the office,
stand by the,
I was like, should we take it down? Because our mental health was in the shit house, you know? So then I would be like, but nahi, mera dil nahi maan raha. Like it's not wrong that the story is there. So finally we did put out a statement saying, we understand some of you are upset, but why can't we hold a space for stories that challenge us, that are difficult to take? I mean, it's a space of compassion and learning together. So no story is a story for everybody. But let us try to keep that space and let us try to do it together. So I think, there are learnings every single day. But what's most important is that the learnings are together. They are not like we are preaching to people how they should be.
Okay. You've been hearing, and I want you to give us the brand perspective now. How risky is it to embrace India's diversity? Because, the Kantar study that came out earlier today, there were 8 parameters, right? Religion, race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, and so much more. Caste in India, of course. Is it okay? How do brands look at the ability to negotiate what can be pretty, like booby trapped? You could step on a landmine, it could blow up in your face, and it would also be token.
Okay. See, typically what happens is if you look at the societal conditioning, um, you might have some very interesting insights in terms of reaching out your messaging to the audiences. You don't know what is the receptivity that the masses have with this because they're used to or accustomed to certain traditions, values, and their upbringing in a way. So, a couple of examples that come to my mind is if you recollect the Titan second marriage commercial and the same-sex marriage commercial. Uh, if you saw the commercials, they were awesome, absolutely bang on, and people did like it, but they got trolled heavily. See, end of the day, if a brand has to run a business, it cannot start by alienating certain people. So while the ads were withdrawn from the mass mediums, they continued playing on the digital platforms and other things as well. So
You also had the Tanishq ad, Jai Krishan.
that's what
No,
I'm
the
saying.
Tanishq ad, which was about the Muslim family
That's
doing
right. That's what I said.
yeah,
One was
the
the second
goat
marriage, one
bharai
was the.
ceremony for the Hindu
That's right.
daughter-in-law.
Yeah. So this one also kind of got trolled heavily, and they had to pull it back. Uh, See again, if you look at the linear television audiences and other things, they're still kind of used to the Sasbau saga, multiple marriages happening in that front, and probably that's how their conditioning has been. And versus you look at certain content that is coming in on OTT platforms, wherein a certain set of audiences are viewing it. These are audiences who are mature, who have kind of probably better sensibilities and acceptabilities to certain relationships. And these content kind of thrives on those platforms, and people do actually comment on it, and you see brands wanting to associate with that kind of content. Uh, sorry.
See, ITC is a huge corporation. There are many businesses. Some of them are not consumer facing and some of them are. How do you all look at diversity and inclusion in your advertising? Because that's very specific here. And does it plow back as brownie points and equity to the corporate brand, or is it something that you all do in connection with your consumer facing brands?
See, there are quite a few initiatives that have been taken at the corporate level as well as at the brand level. At a corporate level, I can think of one of our factories in Tirchi, which employs about 1,500 women, which is almost 80% of the task force. At a brand level, there have been again multiple initiatives that we have undertaken. So, for example, with our fragrance brand Engage, we actually have a fragrance called One Soul, which is gender fluid. So, it's not targeted as a men fragrance or a women fragrance. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. The other things that we did is for a couple of our brands like the Savlon antiseptic liquid or the Fiamma body washes, we actually have the packs with braille labeling. Because if you look at the cabinets in your bathrooms and umpteen times when you actually need the antiseptic liquid, and there are people who are not in a position to kind of pick it up immediately, so the braille label comes in pretty handy. Uh, Something we did with Mangaldeep Agarbattis is we've actually uh, partnered with sight impaired people to help us identify the fragrances which will work.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not just advertising
Not just that,
communication.
it just goes in with the ethos of what we are doing. And
Yeah.
lastly, on Vivel, that I can remember, we actually identified some laws from the Indian judiciary with the help of some lawyers from Supreme Court. And these are laws for women, probably like laws to inheritance, to child custody and things like that. We actually came out with a booklet called Know Your Rights. We went ahead in terms of taking these rights to campuses. So we have done more than 2,000 college campuses wherein we've gone ahead and talked about these rights. And interestingly, when we attended a couple of campus sessions, we were actually impressed that questions were coming in more from the men than the ladies out there. So these are certain things that we have done from a brand-facing perspective and corporate. Anyways, we kind
May I
of.
add to what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. I was just actually going to.
No, because I've actually directed 3 commercials for ITC long back, and when these commercials came to me, they were supposed to be in MP and Bhadrachalam, and they were about farmers, they were about women, about water harvesting and sustainability and other issues, and I thought, okay, CSR, but to my surprise, it was actually a brand film. And I was completely taken aback because I assumed this is going to be CSR. So that's really a good step because you usually see these initiatives are taken via CSR, which is again a checkbox, you know.
So, Neeraj, you do make commercials, ad commercials. What are the kind of briefs you're getting, and how much pushback can you make? When I say pushback, to ensure that your unique take as a filmmaker comes into play. Otherwise, why would they come to Neeraj, right? So, give us a sense of what brands are saying.
I mean, most brands who come to me, they come for emo because I'm known to have made some viral emo commercials. Isko rulana aata hai. That's the line they go with. But most often, so like financial products, I tell them, can I make this protagonist female instead of male? There's always a male protagonist in financial products. Or the idea of inclusion is extremely lopsided.
Like how?
Like you cannot put a Muslim character.
You sorry?
You cannot put a Muslim character. Okay, and I mean, I've seen you can understand. I try to most times I try to flip the gender because it's always so stereotyped. Like a drummer has to be like a kids commercial, which came to me, and it was like the little boy who's a drummer, little girl who's a ballet dancer, a little boy who's a coder and a gamer, and a little girl who's like something about hair and stuff. I flipped it, so I do that, and commercials now also it's understandable. It's market, so they're very shy to take risks. And what I do tell them that you'll have like my most successful commercial is the Touch of Care commercial. I missed Gauri Sawant. She left. I could have met her. So that one was so difficult for everybody involved because Wix was coming. I mean, they were here for 70 years and they're finally coming with a campaign where the traditional cishet mother wasn't there. And it was such a huge step for them. They were obviously extremely nervous. I remember we went with 3-4 months of just ideating on the script. And most of them were not Indians. Actually, all of them were not Indians. And I had to tell them that, listen, it's okay to, like, initially they put her on an ST bus. I said, no, times have changed. She actually travels in her own car. She doesn't take that. So the sense of that. So I feel, so what I have been advocating in terms of like inclusion, what I'm expecting and also telling brands, like this one commercial I was doing, and I told them that my mandate is 50%, and this entire company was all male. And I said, I'm not going ahead unless you hire someone. And that guy had to hire. So what's happening is, like I said about the checkbox, it's coming from, this allyship is coming from a point of view of a very patronizing gaze. It's like, oh, see, we're showing you, we're giving you a space, be grateful. Or pat my back. It's coming from that space. It should always come from a place of having to do corrections, reparations for the inclusions that you've done for many, many years. So about time now you have to come from a place of educating yourself and learning from them and not like, oh, see, I've offered you space. It should start from that. Second, I think allyship should also have this thing where you cannot imagine, see, like for instance, she and I, we have this thing because we both come from certain marginalized identities. I can connect. I have a rapport. So the same way that when you make something about a marginalized identity or any subaltern, you have to involve the lived experience of people. You cannot go away with it because, and also you cannot be like hiring someone and just say, just go through it and just tell us now broad points, give me the brass tacks. No, it doesn't work like that. You have to listen to them. You have to understand what they're saying. Yes, change it in your language, but I think those are the steps that I've been taking. And one thing that I've been advocating for the longest is that, you know, identity in politics or is difficult in an ad space because your duration is less. I understand. Most often it becomes a montage by design of it, and the the problem with montage is that you cannot feel. So the way to do inclusivity is to actually do narratives. You know, because when people are watching narratives, they do not see the stereotype of what they like. You know, they forget that they're looking at a trans person. They forget that they're looking at a Muslim person.
Yeah.
You know, sorry.
No, and also, you know, to look at the word stereotype, it doesn't, it's not a good word today, but it did serve a purpose, right? It was a shorthand. You cut through a lot of things, and that's what advertising needs in that 30 seconds, in that montage form. So, but things are changing, and media is changing. Trinetra, what is the kind of work that you're getting? Because you're getting a lot of work. I'm seeing you, I saw you in Rainbow Rishta, non-fiction. I saw you in Made in Heaven, of course. So what is the kind of work you're getting, and how do you see, you know, are you getting work to sort of tick a box? How do you see it?
So I think if we're talking about work, it would be incomplete if we don't talk about social media and influencer marketing also, because that is of course a huge part of the work that many of us as queer and trans people receive, which I am extremely grateful for, because you know it's democratized the process of storytelling so much, one. And even when it comes to brands, because influencers slash content creators are so much more accessible and their audiences are dedicated to hearing what they have to say, brands I think are starting to realize that there is a huge advantage in influencer marketing, because you know people already have access to this person and care about this person and care about what they have to say. And it's made that process safer, as opposed to me stepping onto a set. I'm sure Sushant has had multiple experiences with commercials, which I don't. When you step onto a set, there are many, many people. And it's not necessarily the safest space, whether it comes to harassment, violence, people passing comments, this, that. And speaking of that, I'm so grateful that Neeraj was there when my first project was happening when it comes to acting, because I remember being on set and I was terrified. Made in Heaven is one of the biggest sets ever, right? And it was my first. It was arguably extremely overwhelming. I was 23 years old at the time, had no idea how to navigate this space, and he was the one person I could come to and say, I'm feeling extremely uncomfortable and dysphoric, and I don't know what to do about it. And we would have conversations, and it is so important, I realized in that moment, and like Sushant was also saying, that you know you need people with diverse lived experiences in every role, not just in front of the camera but behind the camera also. You know, we think of representation, diversity, inclusion, ek trans person ko dal diya. That's not it. You know, especially when it comes to marginalized backgrounds, especially with your work, I find it so powerful because you've done the writing and you've done the direction, and someone behind the camera has done that work. And it shows in the actors, even if they don't belong to that marginalized community, you know. But speaking of what kind of work has come my way, there have been so many. Now, auditions are part of my life. It's an actor's bread and butter, and it's just something that and it is. I'm deeply grateful for that process, because it gives you incredible insights into what a filmmaker thinks, especially of a trans person. That's when you realize, oh my God, you know, what the hell?
So what are you picking up?
What am I?
What are you picking up? What are the insights that you're gleaning when you go for some of these auditions?
Some of them have been incredible, especially when it comes to independent filmmakers. They really do the research. They really want to get into the skin of the character. They want to work with you. It's very collaborative. But I hate to say this, but more often than not, you know, that element of twist of a trans person's identity, the masala that comes with their gender reveal, the cishet man being fooled or tricked by a trans person, these narratives are still very, very prevalent and are very commercial and people are willing to do it and they're willing to work with it, because I think people have also started becoming a little fatigued with the wokeness. They're like, it's fine. You know, that's the reason that a film like Animal is out today and it's not being cancelled the way that many people have been in, say, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. People are tired of talking about the same things. And, you know, filmmakers also know that, now people are tired, na chalega. So many auditions are like that also.
Mansha, I want to pick up something Neeraj said. You know, the ad and the nature of the ad, because especially on television, it's very expensive, the ad, right? But on social media platforms, YouTube has come out with shorts. It all began with TikTok. They went away. Meta came with Instagram. YouTube then went with shorts. So we know the competitive landscape, right? Yeah. But in the process, what you've done, forget advertising. I do a great conversation with Sushant or with Trinetra or with you or with Neeraj or anybody on this panel for half an hour one-on-one, and I'm being told, cut it, make 1 minuters, make 1 minuters. I said, but you know, uska aage piche nahi hai, fir wo 1 minute kaise chalega? So, you know, how do you feel somewhere that while you may be reflecting audience behavior, you're also really leading generations to look and consume in a certain way, which is not necessarily very helpful?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And I think as a business and as a platform, if you're not reflecting the user, then you're not doing right by your own platform or them. So is there this almost insatiable appetite in India for short form content? Absolutely. But at the same time, look, we as a platform have all sorts of formats, right? And we monetize across all of them. So Nikhil Kamath can have a podcast, right? And we have shorts, and then we have long form. There's a lot of money there, you know, and there's music. And so we've learned that we need to roll with the punches. We need to make sure that when Indian users come to YouTube, they're finding that quick hit that they're looking for, and that's why we've launched shorts. But at the same time, what we tell creators, and maybe, you know, Sushant and Trinetra, I've heard this, but it's really about the content strategy. It's not that users only want to watch shorts. It's about how you as a content creator or a creative person look at all the formats on the platform. So our, you know, buzzword, right, really corporate buzzword is multi-format. And it's actually not just a buzzword. And brands like Netflix, for example, have done such an outstanding job of using the short as a bit of a trailer, right? And so this panel, for example, 1 minute could be the trailer or could be a little bit of the whetting of the appetite. Then how do you take them on this journey of then what happens in the long form? And oh, you know what? You loved Anuradha on that panel, watch her on this podcast, right? And so it is a content journey. Short form might be the entry point. It is by no means the be-all and end-all. Right? And there's a place for all formats to exist on the platform. I wanted to react very quickly to a couple of things, if that's all right. You know, something you said about influencer marketing, and, you know, what we're also seeing and relevant for the both of you is, I learned a new word, parasocial relationships, right? I don't know if everyone's talking about this parasocial relationships, right? And I just wanted to say that, you know, again, we put ourselves in the shoes of the creator, and what that really means, Anu, is that as a creator, all these people love you, they are dying over you, they are adoring you, but you don't know them, right? And so they're not close to you, and so that's what a parasocial relationship apparently is. And how do you set boundaries, even as you go into influencer marketing for brands, and how do you set expectations that, hey, this is how you can and cannot behave with me, right? Is just something that came to my mind as you talked about influencer marketing. And the last thing, I'm full of thoughts today, clearly, but as you were talking about advertising and making some mandates around 50% this, you know, qualitatively, we know that there aren't enough women in advertising. We heard the Kantar study today. We did a study last month, right? We analyzed about 20 days of footage. Now, because of the AI, LLM, all the fancy, I had to say AI, okay? It cannot be a panel.
Yeah, I was also thinking I should do an AI question.
Who's going to drop the AI bomb? But apart from all that, the technology analyzed all this 20 days of footage. And while we're all here to be very hopeful, it's pretty egregious, some of the what's going on, right? We found 75% of screen time, and we analyzed 5 years of TV popular scripted television shows for 5 years, and we realized that 75% is young people under the age of 33. Medium to dark-skinned women, I mean, light-skinned women are showed 8 times more, right? And so what I was going to say is that I think what technology players and brands can actually do is enable insights for creators and for creative people, and actually put the data out there to let them make sort of data-driven decision making. So just a few reflections that I thought I'd share both on what you were talking
No,
about.
I'm grateful. Thank you.
No worries.
I was on your Instagram page and I saw some what was it? Skincare? Yeah, okay, yeah, but that's what you were doing. Then there was something that Mac had reached out to you, yeah, for HIV advocacy. What is the kind of work you're getting? And again, how are brands approaching you? I'm not talking about what you're creating as a performer, that's very different. But what are brands reaching out to you for as an influencer, which you are?
In fact, I just did something for YouTube. I did something, I was Diageo's face for their Walker campaign. I've worked with so many of the brands that are here, but please let me tell you, as Trinitra said, it's a reality. Influencer marketing is a full-time job, and I'm always welcome to be double booked, triple booked on a single day. I will manage. You please give the work. Huh? And so the thing is that I have realized that in my 17 years, I've done so much advocacy through my art. My art is my advocacy. कभी कभी जब हम प्रकट ही होते हैं कहीं पे, वो ही हमारा advocacy हो जाता है कि हम भी हैं, है ना? तो ladies and gentlemen, तो हम क्या चले जाएं वापस? So right at the beginning, at such basic level, ladies and gentlemen. So then I'm like, अच्छा चलो हम चलते हैं दीदी. So and English is such a functional language. You can say welcome everyone to this wonderful DEI conference. So through my art also, I kind of, and I hate being preachy because hum bhi koi ye nahi hai. We don't fart rainbows and butterflies all the time, and so we are always learning. And through my thing is when I said that for
Deva.
मग काय बोलायचं? But the thing is that for the longest time, I kept saying, give trans actors trans roles, trans actors trans roles. Nobody was listening. In fact, they started giving more, monetizing our lives through their content. And none of them have really come out and apologized or anything. They have no shame. But so then I said, then even I have to become shameless and show them my art. Let my art talk. So when, for example, as Trinitra said, when Pari Hu Main had come out, I imagined myself as a pariya. Now, regardless whether Sunita was a woman, a cishet woman, I imagined myself as a pari. I manifested that one day I will sing this song. I sang the remake in a film where it was pictured on me. I had to say no to many, many films before this because they wanted somebody else to sing a song. But I said when a Lady Gaga goes on screen and acts, and if there happens to be a song, you don't have a Jennifer Lopez singing for her. She will sing for herself. She's in fact saving you money. Give it to her, yeah? I did it for 1 rupee. But I said, मैं परी हूँ और परी हूँ मैं. ना मुझे छूना ना दूर ही रहना. परी हूँ मैं. मुझे ना छूना. परी हूँ मैं. So, and I say, फूलों में जो नूर है, रानी को ही नूर है. Oh. I have to sing this to myself. Maybe there might not be as many, how do you say, people covering what we do as much as some people have to pay for it. Because then I realized that, okay, maybe not everybody has a 4-octave range, but not everybody can fit into a character like Trinitra. And so they have to pay for it. Good for them. I don't have to. I have to. मैं प्रकट होती हूँ. मैं एडवोकेसी करती हूँ, मैं गाती हूँ मेरे ऑडियंस के लिए. एंड आई चैलेंज दीज नॉर्म्स वेयर दे वर लाइक, नाउ पीपल आर लाइक, एज त्रिनेत्रा सेड, या गिव नाउ वन, चल ट्रांसजेंडर एक ट्रांस को डाल दो, एक किन्नर को डाल दो इस एड में, एंड दिस एंड दैट इज़ वन थिंग. बट आई इन माई फर्स्ट फिल्म, विच इज़ नाउ, प्लीज हैव यू ऑल वॉच्ड इट?
I saw it.
Did you see it? But I became a man. ये बोलते रहते डिफॉल्ट सेटिंग्स, तो मैं गई डिफॉल्ट सेटिंग्स में. Quite hot as a man also.
Lucky you.
Yeah, and so the thing is that, and nobody, you're not telling me what I don't know. You're neither a woman nor a man. I know that. I have a certificate that says it. I didn't become trans again because you said it. Na? So the thing is that I think we need to go with this and say that when I played a man, I showed the journey on screen. I never imagined that I would be in a theater. I have cried and cried and I could not believe that I'm looking at myself with a song that's playing which I have grown up with. Pari Hu Main. I had my singing debut with Sunidhi Chauhan. Not because that is a trance song. परी हूँ ये तुमने ट्रांस ऑक्टेव में गाया है क्या आपने तान पकड़ी मुर्कियाँ आपकी ट्रांस लगी मुझे नो आपका रियाज आपने किन्नर अखाड़े में किया है रियाज नो मैंने रियाज किया है मैंने आसमान के नीचे बैठ के करती हूँ जैसे आप करते हैं It's that once you start looking at an artist as an artist, I don't require you to label me. By you labeling me or by someone labeling me, I don't become that again. I say that, I look at it in the mirror and I'm very happy as to how I've turned out. So I have started putting out that energy and saying that, yes, I want to work, but I don't want an award that will say LGBT Voice of the Year, LGBT Artist of the Year, because I know I will sing a bitch down. So you put me in the open category ना अभी मैं तो देखना चाहती हूँ कि डेब्यूटेंट ये इसको या मुझे बेस्ट डेब्यू मेल में डालेंगे फीमेल में डालेंगे किस में डालेंगे और अगर नहीं डालेंगे तो तुझे पता है ना मोर्चा करने हम चले जाएं
Done.
Paro, I don't know what to say anymore. I don't have questions because I've never been with people who are expressing so much, so freely. You're an interviewer's delight, all of you. You know, Mansha saying, I want to make 2 more points. Oh, wonderful.
I need one second. I need shares in all the YouTube interviews I have done because all of them have become viral. You give, no dislikes. See, that's how you change perspective.
I don't know. Kya ada, kya jalve tere paro.
I mean, मैं बता सकती हूँ, but I don't think that's a topic.
No, are brands ready to be real? Because if you have to represent India really, truly, then you've got to get real. Are they ready to be real? What's your assessment? You know, we were watching we watched some ads before we got into this session. You do consume ads. You have strong views on them. Are brands ready?
So I don't know a lot about brands, you know. I think that I feel like advertising in some of its early years was a little bit effortlessly inclusive in the sense that it was very effervescent because it was fun. I mean, like the way that Sushant loved Pari Hu Main, there were many ads we loved, right? And that enjoyment used to make us make our own meanings of the images that were on screen. Now I do think that it's all a little sanitized, right? So in the name of diversity and inclusion, I think you can fall into this trap of replacing old stereotypes with new stereotypes. The old normal is replaced with a new normal. So that, you know, diversity always means certain kinds of things. And so I'm quite curious about what gets left out every time you, so to say, include something. Who are you not including? I mean, obviously, caste is the big thing, right? Yeah. And it's not, caste is a thing we don't name.
And it's actually the conversation in the real world that's right up there front and center, isn't it?
But what's also interesting is that this sanitization that occurs, right, is also a form of kind of caste language. Like everything is very clean and everything is very like normal, you know? So, and that also goes for sexuality. Like if I say love is love, then it looks like heterosexual people, right? So it's acceptable. But if I have some kind of a crazy, different idea of sexualness, you're going to keep it out. So, I mean, while I think social media is amazing, I don't share the experience as a person who's working with content that is not at all in the formats, because we refuse the formats on Agents of Ishq. We do have long form writing, and I don't think it is that easy to promote it. I mean, I wish that it was so, but it's very difficult because we live in a time period where we are consumer citizens. We consume each other
Yeah.
on social media, and we're only interested in consuming, not in engaging.
Yeah.
I mean, we can talk about sex all we like, but we are living in a time where people are not having that much sex, I can tell you, since I work on it. And why? Because intimacy is a deep crisis, right? So actually, how are you going to create inclusion without intimacy is a very big question. And I just want to say that
That's a quote for the 1 minute from Paro. How do you create inclusion without intimacy?
But I also want to say that in the 8 years that Agents of Ishq has been alive, the thing called community standards, which don't allow you to promote content, have become worse, not better.
Oh.
Yeah. So the number of things that we can't promote. Earlier it was like, okay, no photographs with naked people.
Yeah.
But now it's no drawings of naked people. Now there's, words, hashtags, abortion. We spent 3 days trying to promote some content we made on abortion on YouTube, of course, Instagram, so bhuja, you'll get like, your account will get cancelled, you know. So I think there are so many things that don't fit into the sanitary idea of diversity and inclusion that is very hard to put in. So I'm going to tell you a very tiny story. We worked with a brand on a music video. It was a dating app. And there was 1.5 second shot of Shikha Tanzania swiping. Okay? Yeah. So it's a video called Marzi Hai Minimum. And we like, but let's put some good-looking men that we think are good-looking in there. And at 12 o'clock, first, I got 3 calls from the person in the brand saying, one, I think you've made a mistake, Paromita, because she's also swiping on a girl. So are we saying she's bisexual? So I'm like, we're not saying anything. Maybe she is, maybe she's not. Does it matter? It's like 1.5 seconds. Obviously we put it in there for a reason. Then it was like, I think it'll be a problem, so you should change it. So we're like, okay, we changed it. Then it's like, can you put some different kind of guys in there? So I was like, what's wrong with the guys in there? Can you put people who are happier looking? Okay, so in the end, let's say, yes, upmarket looking guys. None of them were smiling. They all were the dadiwala type of hipster boys, glowering, deeply, moodily, who will be very boring on a date. उनको ही डाला अपन ने आखिर 5 लाख के लिए ज़मीर बेच दिया, so to speak. But that is it's so childish, that encounter. You're just like, and so I also feel like without honesty, look, we want to do something, but there are some barriers we're not going to be able to cross. How can we creatively solve this?
Yeah.
अब वो बातचीत नहीं होगी तो फिर क्या बदलने वाला है, right? Yeah.
You get the final word as the custodian of brands on this panel, as one of the custodians of brands on this panel.
No, so I was just thinking, when it comes to me, what is it that I'm going to talk about, because quite a bit has been said, and what is it different that I'm going to...
Sure.
But if you look at the way content has shaped up over a period of time. So today, content has got 2 objectives. One is it's a reflection of the society, and the flip side of that is it also is an influencer to the society. So it depends on how smartly the content is created. So for example, let's look at some of the stereotypes on content. A working woman in a farm is a victim to advances of the Thakur or whatever. And if it's a urban scenario, the boss is eyeing her. Okay, so that's the kind of stereotype that has kind of come in. If you look at the minority community being depicted, they've always been portrayed with an alienation. When is it that setting has been shown wherein it's an open acceptance to who you are and what you are in your mind? No, why can't it be an inclusion from that perspective? So once the content starts having that acceptability around all these things, is how it's going to reflect back to the society, and therefore the feedback will come in with much larger acceptance. So I think from a brand's perspective, that's something that we need to drive, collaborate, co-create content like this, and leave messages which are positive in nature. I think I'm happy to kind of initiate this conversation with anyone on the stage to kind of take it forward.
Sure.
Can I say something as one of the 2 corporates on the panel?
Yeah.
You asked how are brands responding now. I know we're out of time. You asked how are brands doing this. It occurred to me, a brand is a nebulous entity. It is a thing, but what is a brand but brand managers behind it, right? What is a brand but the people who manage the brand? And I think the more you're seeing allies step into those positions, the more you're seeing people push, to Neeraj's point or to Paramita's point, these are the kind of comments and feedback that creative people get. And you're going to get it from people who don't get the program, right? And so the more we can train these people, corporates actually, the better the brands will become at diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I say, let's go to the B schools, yeah. Let's go to all the business schools around the country. And if we teach business ethics, why should we also not be teaching as just a very core course, diversity, equity, and inclusion? So I just wanted to, plus one. And
you're
say
right. And if you
corporates
actually
Plus
look-
one, and
need
I
a
think a
school.
big shout out to Manisha and the entire team at ASCII, because they're really, I think, pushing the envelope on meaningful conversations. I mean, I've been to many corporate seminars, and would you agree that you really got to say what you wanted to say here without
I
having
wanted to add
pull
one
your
last thing,
punches?
okay? I just have to say this, that see, no representation is perfect, okay? Everyone wants to get like that thing absolutely right. There is no perfect representative of a community. There is no perfect diversity and inclusion campaign, and no one will ever get it absolutely right. So if that is what is scaring a brand, that we will make a mistake, that we will anger people, we will not represent right, let that not stop you. Because no matter which community you belong to, right, it's never going to be perfect. Because the fact of the matter is every community is also very diverse. Even the trans community is extremely diverse. And another thing I wanted to add, because you mentioned the VIX campaign, is there were so many stereotypes broken around it, and I want to thank you for it, because Gauriji is not an actor. And because of your direction and the way that was written, you showed
I made
people...
her cry, actually. She said, I'm not
Yeah.
giving you glycerin, you have to cry yourself. So she did it. I don't know how to she
That was incredible, and there's always this excuse ki, oh, there's not enough people, talent from the community to do their job, talent nahi hai, whatever. You made a non-actor act so beautifully. So that's no longer an excuse. Talent is sitting in front of you, clearly. Now do your jobs.
Tell, yeah. I told you, these people speak their mind, and I think that helped us mine a lot of things, insights, experiences, funny stories that we can work with. Thank you, everybody, for this wonderful conversation, and thank you for watching. We've gone over time, but I don't think you mind, do you? Thank you.